Hi, this is Carrie with Canary Quilts, and I wanted to introduce you to my October 22nd, 2021 Friday freebie pattern. I'm calling this To Grandmother's House We Go. And this is a fairly simple pattern with squares and a few half square triangle squares. So if you would like to do this little table runner, you can go to canaryquilts.com and download the pattern. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do the half square triangles, and I'm going to show you how to nest the seams in these rows here so that they go together nicely and you get real nice points right here. So I hope you enjoy this video, and thank you very much. Welcome to Canary Quilts. You can get our free patterns in our free resource library located at canaryquilts.com. You can access this from the library access page. Scroll down the page to sign up for a free password to enter our free resource library, or click to enter the free resource library. Once in our free resource library, you will have access to all our free patterns and downloads. We put out a new free pattern every Friday. I hope you enjoy this video, and please subscribe to our channel so you will be notified of all our new content. Thank you. Hello, this is Carrie with Canary Quilts, and today I am going to be putting together this table runner called To Grandmother's House We Go. And this is approximately what I want it to look like. I've gotten one block done, and I'm going to need 3 blocks in the end. And I've got my pieces here laid out. So these smaller squares are what are going to be out here in the green, and then these larger squares we're going to turn into these half square triangle squares. So today I'm going to touch on how to make these half square triangle squares, and then how to put this together and nest the seams so that you can get these nice points here. Okay, so I'm going to start with the half square triangles. And to get our half square triangles, we're going to take these larger squares. We're going to lay it on top of one another, and I'm going to clip it. And then I'm going to mark a diagonal line. So when I go over to my machine, I want to sew 1/4 of an inch from this diagonal line I just made, and we can mark that here, our sewing line. So I'm going to put my 1/4 inch ruler line here and mark my 1/4 inch sewing line on both sides. The other thing you could do is use your 1/4 inch foot and put the 1/4 inch part of your foot right here on this middle line, and then it will sew 1/4 of an inch away. So what we want to do is go over to the machine and sew right here along these sewing lines I just made. So I'm going to do that with all 4 of these. And I'm going to take them over to my machine and get them sewn. So I'll do one more of these, show you how it's done, and then show you what it looks like when it's sewn. So I'm going to draw my diagonal, mark 1/4 of an inch from that diagonal in the middle to mark my sewing line on each side of it. So I am going to take these over to my machine now. I'm going to get them sewn up, and I'll bring them back and show you what they look like. Okay, I've got my seams sewed in, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so you can see that I sewed 1/4 of an inch from that center diagonal line. So now that center diagonal line is going to be our cutting line. And I'm just going to use my rotary cutter and just go right down that line. And now I have 2 half square triangle squares. I am going to get all 4 of these cut. And then, oh, that one I sewed wrong. And then I am going to, I need to redo that one. I'm going to iron the seam open. So I'm going to go over to my iron and get these seams ironed open and be right back. Okay, since I made a mistake, I want to show you how I'm going to rip this out. I'm going to start with these threads. I always backstitch at the beginning so that they don't come apart. So I use my seam ripper to pull those back stitches out. And then I've got this great little wall pet groomer that I found on Amazon, and I can put the link below, that I use to just cut all my threads. So once you get that started at the beginning, just get those threads out. You can just pull it back and it exposes those threads. Turn this on. So what I did was I gently pulled up on the fabric to expose the threads and then hit the threads with that little pet groomer. And it goes really fast. Now this was a small piece, but if you make a bigger mistake, this is a great tool. Okay, so I'm gonna go get this sewn in the right spot. So I don't usually draw my sewing lines, and that's what confused me. When I turned it, I used the line I saw with my 1/4 inch foot. So I usually just run my 1/4 inch foot down this center line, and that gets me a 1/4 of an inch away from it. But you can also draw the line, and you can sew on that, the sewing line. So I'm gonna get this cut, and I'm going to get it sewn or ironed open. Okay, so I've got all my half square triangles. The seams pressed open. So now I need to trim them, and they need to be 2.5 inches square. So I have this ruler that has this 45-degree angle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up, that line, with my seam. And then I'm going to find my 2.5 intersection, and you can mark that with tape if it helps you. Find your 2.5 mark intersection, line the line up with your seam, and then trim on either side here. And then I'm going to turn it around and do the exact same thing just to make sure it's straight. There won't be much cuts up here, but you'll get rid of those little ears on the end. And that's how I get my 2.5 inch square trim out of my blocks, my half square triangle blocks. So I'll do one more. I'm going to line this line here up on my seam, find my 2.5 inch intersection here. Line those up on the sides. Seam is lined up. Trim. Turn it and do the exact same thing. And this trim won't be as big, but you'll just square it up a little better and get rid of those tails. There we go. So I'm going to do that with all 8 of them. Okay, I've got my half square triangles done here, the squares, and now all our sizes are exactly the same. And what we're going to do is we're going to line up our new block exactly like this block. So I'm going to use that as my template. So I'm just going to start with this top row and start going across and putting it in the right order. Okay, I seem to have lost one of my half square triangles, but that's what we're gonna do, is get it set up just like this so we can start sewing our rows together. So I'm a doofus and I found my other piece here, my half square triangle square, over by the iron. So this is how we're gonna put it together. And what I usually do is take my pieces and stack them on top of each other, how I'm going to be sewing them, like this. So the one thing we want to do with putting these together is we don't want to sew these seams open. These seams on this first row, we want to sew this way. See that? So every one of these seams will be sewn this way, so that when we get to this next row and we start sewing, we're going to make sure our seams are ironed this way, so that when we get done and have all our seams in each row ironed, like this seams will be ironed this way, this one this way, this one this way, and so forth, we'll be able to nest these seams right together so that they butt up like that. Like when we're putting these two rows together, these seams will just butt up to each other nicely. So I'm going to get this first row sewn together, show you how I'm going to get the first two rows sewn together, and I'll show you how I iron them so that you can see how to do it from there on forward. Okay, here's my first two rows, and you can see that the seams are now ironed opposite directions, so we can butt those together real nicely. So here's a closer view of the seams that I did, and you can see where I iron the seams this way here and this way on the bottom one, so that when we flip them over and we go to put them together, so they want to go together like this, we can take these seams right here and just butt them up together, and you can feel when they're butted up together there. So you can see right inside there how they just go, they nest right together. So then we're just going to pin them just like that. And we're going to go down and just nest all these seams and then sew our 1/4 inch. And we should have some pretty good looking corners. So I'm going to get this sewn and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, there they are sewn together, and you can see these points look really good. And that's what nesting a seam does. It just makes it easier to go together, and it makes these points just line up really nice. And then I ironed open this seam right here. So this is how my pieces go. So my next one's going to line up. And when I get all these pieces sewn together individually, I now want to, since this seam is ironed this way, I'm going to want to iron them this way. And then you just keep doing that, opposing your seams all the way down through your rows, and you'll have nested seams. So here's my finished block after nesting all the seams. You can just see these points just turned out really nice. And then this is what it looks like on the back, and you can really see those seams, which way they go. This way, this way, this way, this way, this way. So that's how you nest seams, if you didn't know. Makes the job of putting these squares together really easy. So to trim my block, I'm just gonna lay the 2 1/4 line right here on this seam, and if it needs to be trimmed, I'll trim it up. And I'll do that on all 4 sides. And there's not much on this side. So it ended up pretty square. That's good. Sometimes they don't end up that square. May depend on, you know, how hard you iron it, or you just didn't have your blocks cut exactly how you should have. And the material stretches. So, yeah, nice and square. So there is my finished block. So you remember at the beginning of the video, this is what I was going for. And I have my 3 blocks all finished. So I'm just going to lay them out like this. Whoops, let's see, that's how we want it. So this is going to be how my table runner is laid out. So now I'm just going to sew these 3 blocks together, put a border on it, bind it, and back it and quilt it. And we should be good to go. Okay, so there's my finished quilt top. I had enough to do a 1.5 inch binding, or not binding cut, a border cut for this little top in the green that's right here in the path. So what I'll end up with in the end is a 1 inch green border. So there's my finished table runner. And I ended up doing a continuous binding, and I put 2 pieces together that were different colors, and I wasn't too sure how that was going to turn out, so I didn't tape it, but it actually turned out nice. Didn't turn out too bad, so yeah. Next time I'll have to actually show how to do it on film. So that's not a good printout, but that's what I was going for. And that's what I got. So it turned out really nice. Pretty simple to put together too. Got a little bit of, you're not working with all squares. You're working with some half triangle squares and some squares. So not too shabby. So let me know if you put this together. Go to my Facebook page, canaryquilts.com. Let me leave pictures there if you've done this. What colors you chose. You could certainly choose some Christmas colors and make a Christmas table runner. So thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.